Have you ever wondered if love has the power to change a person completely? Today's story is one that will make you believe that love can melt even stone. Today on CineKom, we're diving into Man in Love, a tale of redemption, sacrifice, and the healing power of love that will make you fall in love again. Welcome to CineKom. The story begins with Zhang, a debt collector whose job is to recover money from people who have failed to repay their loans on time. One day, he goes to collect money from a man named Meng, beats him up, and demands payment. Meng pleads, explaining that all his money was spent on his daughter's surgery, which is scheduled for that day. He says he has nothing left to give, even offering Zhang to take his life if needed. Zhang, moved by Meng's words, feels sorrowful and leaves, not only without taking money, but also giving Meng some money instead. When his boss learns about this, she scolds him harshly, reminding him that this is against their business principles. To teach him a lesson, she sends him to a hospital where we meet the second main character, Ting, Meng's daughter. At the hospital, Zhang's colleagues force Ting to sign some papers, but during the entire ordeal, Zhang keeps staring at her, feeling something stir within him. Despite his emotions, he finishes his work and leaves, determined not to face further humiliation from his boss. Zhang's niece, who frequently borrows money from him for makeup kits, visits him that day. Over time, Zhang begins to think about Ting more and more, even following her around. Things escalate when he shows up at her workplace, a bank. Ting, furious, tries to avoid him. Zhang buys all the tickets in the queue where Ting was working, forcing her to interact with him. Frustrated, she complains to her manager, but Zhang continues to insist he can help her repay her father's loan in a unique way. Ting dismisses him, saying she doesn't need his help. Zhang eventually gets an idea and creates a colorful chart with the help of his niece's crayons. He presents this chart to Ting, explaining that every time she goes on a date with him, she can fill in one box. And once all the boxes are filled, her father's loan will be considered repaid. Ting, appalled, throws juice on him and storms off. Zhang endures her anger, unwilling to retaliate because of his growing affection for her. Meanwhile, Ting struggles to pay her father's mounting hospital bills. She tries to seek help from others but fails, leaving her no choice but to approach Zhang. She agrees to his date proposal, reasoning that eating meals together isn't a big deal. From then on, they meet regularly, marking boxes on the chart after each date. Zhang tries hard to impress Ting, even changing his haircut and dressing style, but she remains indifferent. During their interactions, Zhang grows closer to Ting's father, often visiting him in the hospital and caring for him. Ting notices this and feels touched, but says nothing. One day, she sketches on the side of the chart for fun. Zhang, overwhelmed with joy, spends the whole night admiring her drawing. Zhang begins sending Ting snacks at her workplace, further softening her perception of him. However, when Ting sees Zhang beating up some shopkeepers during a collection job, she misunderstands the situation and assumes he's a violent thug. Hurt by the misunderstanding, Zhang confronts his boss, who reminds him of his own financial debts and the help she provided for his family. Zhang resolves to stick with his job, but remains conflicted. One day, Ting finds her father on the hospital terrace with Zhang, who explains that he brought him there to get sunlight after months indoors. Ting, upset, rudely dismisses Zhang. When Zhang confesses his love for her, she walks away without responding, leaving him heartbroken. Zhang spirals into self-destruction, drinking heavily and becoming increasingly violent. In a drunken state, he visits the hospital only to learn that Ting's father has passed away. Ting is devastated by her father's death, feeling completely alone. At the funeral, a priest asks if anyone else will join her, and she replies that no one will. However, Zhang arrives with his friends to support her, ensuring she doesn't feel lonely. They help her perform all the rituals, earning Ting's gratitude. Later, a shopkeeper whom Ting had misunderstood reveals that Zhang is actually a kind person who had given them extra time to repay their debt. Realizing her mistake, Ting feels remorseful for misjudging him. In the following days, Zhang brings Ting candies to cheer her up, making her smile. She invites him to the terrace, where they share a heartfelt conversation. When Ting asks what he likes about her, Zhang replies that he loves everything about her. Touched, Ting kisses him on the cheek, leaving him overjoyed. As things improve between them, Zhang pays off all her father's debts after his death. Their relationship blossoms, and Zhang eventually proposes to her in front of everyone, which she happily accepts. Ting confides her dream of opening a tea shop, and with Zhang's support, she starts moving toward her goals. The story beautifully illustrates how love can transform even the harshest individuals, proving that even a debt collector can turn into a caring lover. She'd already collected the insurance money from her dad's policy and saved up some of her own, but it still wasn't enough. Hearing this, Zhang reassured her, saying, "Don't worry, I'll figure something out and let you know." Ting felt touched by how much he cared for her. A few days later, it was their 3rd-month anniversary, and Ting had planned a dinner to celebrate. However, Zhang arrived late because he had been out collecting debts and had been badly injured in the process. Despite his injuries, he made it to her, which alarmed Ting. She insisted they go to the hospital immediately, but Zhang stopped her to share some news. He had decided to quit this dangerous job so he could work with her in the tea shop. He also told his boss about his decision, who warned him, "You're doing all this for that girl. Mark my words, one day you'll regret it." Zhang, however, didn't care. From that day onward, they began searching for a location for the tea shop, but the rental costs were far beyond what they could afford. After pondering all night, Zhang decided to borrow money from his boss. When he went to meet her, she told him, "We're going to a casino tomorrow. Bring your money, and you might earn some extra cash." Zhang reluctantly agreed. Later, he showed Ting a voucher for a shop space he had selected. Ting asked how they could afford it, to which Zhang lied, saying his company was offering a retirement fund that he would receive the next day. He assured her that once they secured the shop, they would settle down and get married. He even promised to visit her dad's grave to show him that Ting was no longer alone. Touched, Ting became emotional, and they hugged before falling asleep. The next morning, Zhang took all his money and went to the casino his boss had mentioned. It was an illegal gambling operation. Zhang handed over his money to his boss, who promised him significant returns. At first, things seemed to be going well, but suddenly a group of thugs arrived, attacked everyone, and looted all the money. Zhang's boss fled the scene, leaving him behind. Zhang tried to fight off some of the attackers, but was severely beaten. To his shock, he discovered one of the thugs worked for his boss, revealing it was all her scheme. Meanwhile, Ting anxiously waited at the real estate office, wondering why Zhang hadn't shown up. When he finally arrived, beaten and broken, she ran out to him, horrified. She asked what had happened, and Zhang admitted that all the money, her dad's insurance, his savings, and everything else was gone. Shocked, Ting demanded to know where he had gone with the money. Zhang confessed that he had gone gambling. Despite everything, Ting told him to come home with her. But Zhang snapped at her, saying, "This is who I am. Do you still want to stay in this relationship? Or are you just here because your dad's loan hasn't been fully repaid yet?" Angry and hurt, Ting slapped him and said, "So you don't love me? This was all an act?" She stormed off, leaving Zhang to realize how much he had hurt her. As she walked away, Zhang broke down crying, but before he could compose himself, the police arrived. When they questioned him about his state, he angrily shoved them, saying, "Can't I even drink now?" He lashed out at the officers, which landed him in jail. 6 months later, Zhang was released on parole for good behavior. The first thing he did was track down information about his boss. He discovered that she had used the stolen money to transition into a politician, leaving her debt collection business behind. Zhang confronted her, begging her to return the money, explaining that it wasn't his to lose. She coldly denied any involvement, even pretending not to recognize him. Desperate, Zhang pleaded with her, but she had him thrown out. Zhang then searched for Ting, finding her living in extreme poverty due to everything she had lost. He felt immense guilt, knowing it was all his fault. Despite his deteriorating health, he went back to his boss's office the next day. This time, he attacked her guards and threatened her with a gas cylinder, demanding the money. Terrified, she finally returned the funds. Zhang immediately took the money to Ting, telling her, "Here, I brought your money back." Ting, however, asked, "Did you think I left that day because of the money?" She walked away, ignoring his pleas for her to take it. Zhang chased after her, begging her to stop. When she didn't, he collapsed in pain from his worsening condition. Ting turned around and saw him suffering, realizing he had been hiding his illness from her. She ran to him, hugged him tightly, and tearfully said, "Please don't leave me again. I can't be alone anymore." From that day forward, Ting began taking care of Zhang. She cooked for him, spent time with him, and used the money he had returned to pay for his surgery. Although the surgery had slim chances of success, she clung to hope. After the operation, Zhang grew weaker, but Ting stayed by his side, reading to him and taking him to the terrace to enjoy the sunlight. One day, Zhang passed away, leaving Ting devastated. His death had the biggest impact on his father, who was so heartbroken that he developed memory loss. At Jung's funeral, many people came to pay their respects, people he had helped during his life. Although he had done wrong out of necessity, Jung was remembered as a kind-hearted person. Years later, on New Year's Eve, Ting was taking Jung's father out, but his memory loss made him repeatedly ask when Jung would return. Ting had no answer, so she simply said, "He'll be back soon." In the final scene, we see Ting sitting at her office desk, where she has kept the chart Jung had made on their first date. The chart was never fully filled because they didn't get enough time together. Ting tried to fix their mistakes, but by the time everything was right, Jung's time had run out. Thanks for watching the video. If you like this video, then comment and share it with your loved ones and subscribe to the channel to watch such content from me. See you in the next video. Till then, take care.